turn some heads when you reach for the crown. This is where the legend begins. This is where the legend begins. This is where the legend. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? You ain't even ready for it. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? You ain't even ready for it. It's hard to take, yeah. Watching me show the world that I'm one of the greats. No rival, no pressure, no force on this earth. Never keep me from what has been mine since this birth. This is where the legend begins. This is where the legend begins.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. I like to say that's highly debatable. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from Behind Enemy Lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my co-host, Fox Trevise. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Somebody just gave us a follow, Ninja Warrior. Thank you. Thank you very much for the follow. Much appreciated.
Thank you for the follow, and I love that show. So we have a lot of stories and something we got to go through rather quickly. So let's get right into it. But thank you for everyone who likes, follows, subscribes, supports us financially. We appreciate it very much. And let's move on.
Okay, so our first story. Give me a second here. I need to. There we go. All right. So our first story tonight is the spaghetti governor has found himself in hot water over his saucy conduct this week. We told you last week about the walls closing in for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. As a recap, this was the statement that Cuomo released in defense of his actions. Again, we'll remind you, the video that we're about to show you is not edited by us. All of the images that are being played over Cuomo's voice, he released this video himself. His team edited these pictures into
he
the
spent
video.
Money on this.
Yes, like this is now again. It might look like it's a meme. It might look like it's a smear piece. That, like we edited this to make him look bad, but no. The video that I'm about to play is as intended, released by Andrew Cuomo. So here is Andrew Cuomo's defense that we watched last week.
Complainants raised against me questions that have sought to unfairly characterize and weaponize everyday interactions that I've had with any number of New Yorkers. The New York Times published a front page picture of me touching a woman's face at a wedding and then kissing her on the cheek. That is not front page news. I've been making the same gesture in public all my life. I actually learned it from my mother and from my father. It is meant to convey warmth, nothing more. Indeed, there are hundreds if not thousands of photos of me using the exact same gesture. I do it with everyone. Black and white, young
Not like this.
and old, straight and LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street. After the event, the woman told the press that she took offense at the gesture. And for that, I apologize.
I'm sorry that you're
Another
offended.
woman stated that I kissed her on the forehead at our Christmas party and that I said, "Ciao, Bella." Now, I don't remember doing it, but I'm sure that I did. I do kiss people on the forehead.
I molest
I
people
do
so
kiss
often I
people
can't
on the
remember
cheek.
every single one.
I do kiss people on the hand. I do embrace people. I do hug people, men and women. I do on occasion say, "Ciao, Bella." On occasion, I do slip and say sweetheart or darling or honey. I do banter with people. I do tell jokes.
I will point out that within this, he's recognizing, and I don't even agree with it, but he's recognizing that calling a girl sweetie, that's not okay. But it should be perfectly okay for him to grab them by the face and kiss their forehead.
Some better than others. I am the same person in public as I am in private. You have seen me do it on TV through all my briefings and for 40 years before that. I try to put people at ease. I try to make them smile.
I
try
know.
to
I feel
connect
pretty
with them.
uneasy watching
And
this.
I try to show my appreciation and my friendship.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Unsurprisingly, the defense of "but I molest everyone I meet" was not super effective, and just 1 week later, Cuomo released another statement.
One of the most challenging times for government in a generation. Government really needs to function today. Government needs to perform. It is a matter of life and death, government operations.
Yeah,
And
like,
wasting
nursing
energy on
homes.
distractions is the last
Life
thing
and death.
that state government should be doing. And I cannot be the cause of that. New York tough means New York loving. And I love New York.
Oh no.
And I love you.
No.
And
love New York
everything
too much.
I have ever done
Please don't.
has been motivated by that love.
No.
And I would never want to be
That doesn't make
unhelpful
it
in
better.
any way.
That doesn't make it better. It's like, I mean, like, if you guys, I know we got a lot of guys in the audience. I know some of you guys are female, as we know, Thunder Erica in particular. But if you guys have been probably in an office situation or a school situation or just any situation, if you touched a girl the way that Andrew Cuomo touches girls and then said, well, I only did it because I love them, that doesn't make it okay. That makes it a lot worse, actually. It makes it a lot worse.
I love them, and I do it to everybody. Those are his defenses so far.
So how is this all gonna pay off? We're getting to the meat of the video here. Let's see here. So we had the justification of, well, I do it to everybody. That wasn't effective. Then he just tried to justify it again. Well, I only did it because I loved them. Let's see if that's effective. Let's see how this video plays out here.
And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing.
Oh, no.
And therefore, that's what I'll do. Because I work for you. And doing the right thing is doing the right thing for you. Because as we say, it's not about me.
For you.
It's about we. Kathy Hochul, my lieutenant governor, is smart and competent, This transition must be seamless. We have a lot going on. I'm very worried about the Delta variant, and so should you be.
There's so
But
many
she can come up to
elderly
speed
people in
quickly,
nursing
and my
homes that
resignation
still
will
need to
be
die.
effective in 14 days. Variant, and so
You
should
spoke over the part where he said he was resigning, Dyer.
you be.
Because obvious.
But she can come up to speed quickly, and my resignation will be effective in 14 days. To my team,
So apparently you get 14 days after you've molested hundreds of people. So there's been a lot of discussion that Andrew Cuomo should be actually arrested for some of the activity that he's participated in. And I don't know if he should get a 14-day head start on that. I think that if the state has the evidence, they should pursue it immediately and arrest him immediately. Because the public sentiment and the Democrat sentiment on Cuomo has taken such a hairpin U-turn, I would be actually unsurprised if he was arrested. If Andrew Cuomo was actually arrested, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's more likely that it won't happen. But if it did happen, I think that the sentiment against him is so severe that they might actually do it, which would be crazy.
So he is currently facing a criminal investigation. However, I think he's facing a criminal investigation much like Hillary was facing an investigation for her, her crimes. I think that they are doing it just to say that they are holding their side accountable. They're feigning doing it. But then if he gets a punishment, it'll be a slap on the wrist. He'll get some sort of settlement. He won't actually be punished for what he's done. They got to a head where they couldn't hide what he was doing anymore, and there was enough activists on their own side that were demanding they do something, that they're going to do exactly that. They're going to do something not of any consequence or substance.
Slap on the wrist, more like tap on the ass. Am I right?
He's not going to go to jail. He might actually be charged with something or probably have it settled outside of court.
So predictably, after he announced his resignation, you had the procession of idiot late night hosts all making jokes like, "Oh, it's great that we got the perv out," and is it really a 14 days notice kind of a thing when you rape people? And all these same quote unquote funny men of late night were all talking about how they were homosexuals beforehand and all this stuff, just praising him, not even doing funny bits about him because, back during the thick of the pandemic, there was nothing funny about Cuomo. He's a very serious, hard-hitting.
He was doing
governor.
everything right.
Yes.
According to them.
Though I do have to retract a previous thing I've said on the show before, which is that Andrew Cuomo was he didn't really deserve an Emmy, other than the fact that everything he did was just kind of a make believe. But now that he has been officially incredibly accused, and there's pictures of him doing it, of sexually harassing women, I think he absolutely fits in with the Hollywood crowd, and he definitely deserves that Emmy. He touched way more girls than anyone else who's ever gotten an Emmy. If anyone deserves an Emmy, because that's basically what they give out Emmys for, is like sexual harassment. Like whoever has sexually harassed the most gets an Emmy. So I am happy to see that Andrew Cuomo is getting the recognition in belonging to the group that he deserves to belong with.
Let's not forget what the standard they set during the Me Too era is. If you speak to a woman when she doesn't want to be spoken to, or if you touch her in any way, no matter what the intention is, doesn't matter what the motive is, you touch them in a way that they don't like, you speak to them when they don't want to be spoken to, and that is sexual harassment. That is their standard. Make sure you hold them to it.
I thought that just saying that you loved them was an offense.
No, actually, that makes it worse.
Oh, my bad. I really screwed that one up. Okay, so
asking a girl on a date when she doesn't want to accept the date is being a sex pest. Really? So you can never ask women on dates, apparently.
Well, they had that with that one guy. I can't remember what his name is. That one comedian that's like extremely unfunny. But he like went on like a bad date, and they said that he like sexually harassed a girl, and it was just because they had like a bad date. And I was like, okay, like you're not even allowed to have like a date that kind of goes awry anymore. Okay. Any other closing thoughts on this?
Nope. Let's go.
All right. Good riddance, Cuomo. I guess we'll see if this gets capped off with an arrest, but I don't know. I would
Fingers crossed. Not going to happen though.
Yeah. All right. So our next story is the Freedom Terminator. Dun dun dun. All right. So let's the illustrious T1000 governor. Yeah, he had something to say about freedom this week. Let's take a listen.
There's still people that live in denials. There's still people that don't believe in masks. There's still people out there that say, well, we don't have to do social distancing and all this kind of stuff. There is misinformation out there. And my point of it was basically, look, there's no one that knows more about a virus than I do, because I studied this issue for 50 years. And the same is also with the virus. There are people out there that are experts that study this year after year after year, and that are experienced, like Dr. Fauci, that has been in this, probably for his entire life. I mean, why would you not believe someone like that? So, and there's so many other scientists out there and experts on this subject. So I believe them and I follow them very carefully. And of course, sometimes things are happening that are unexpected. So then you have to make the adjustments and all that. But I think people should know there is a virus here. It kills people. And the only way we prevent it is to get vaccinated, to wear masks, to do social distancing, washing your hands all the time, and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom, because with freedom comes obligations and kind of responsibilities.
Screw your freedom.
Fox,
Screw your
Fox.
freedom.
Among the things that the scientists don't agree on is masks, the efficacy of masks. So he's saying we should follow what the science, what Fauci says. Well, you know what? The CDC and Fauci both have made arguments that masks don't work against COVID-19 or the coronavirus. So, I mean, we are listening to them.
Yeah. So on the main point that he made, screw your freedom. Some of you guys might be asking yourselves, well, where would Arnold get such an idea? And for that, we point you to a tweet from Jack Posobiec, who revived a forgotten fact about the Schwarzenegger family legacy. From Jack Posobiec, Arnold Schwarzenegger's father was a member of Hitler's Brown Shirts and served as a first sergeant in the Wehrmacht, which is a we'll get into what the definition of that is, but it's a German word. Arnold's dad was a Nazi. Not like a little bit of Nazi, but like a lot of bit of Nazi.
Nazi fags.
Like,
How dare you?
Using
Why would you do that?
Thank you.
Did you do that?
Adderlufus gave us $5. Thank you. He says get into the choppa.
great timing.
Yes,
Oh my gosh. He was a radical believer of the Nazi ideology. He wasn't someone that was just recruited.
Yeah,
So a fact check.
Yep. Yeah. And again, this is a pretty bold claim, right? So like, is this true, Dyer? Is it true that Arnold Schwarzenegger's father
Glad you
was
asked.
very
So-
Nazi?
A fact check from Newsweek confirms. They write, fact check true. Arnold Schwarzenegger's father, Gustav, was indeed a Nazi. He was a Nazi sergeant, given having risen to the rank of master sergeant within the Fliegenberger?
There's a lot of German words for like their different divisions, and we're not going to even attempt to pronounce them correctly. If you would like to know what they are, you can go read Newsweek's article about it.
Yeah.
Because
So he was a
master.
master. So he was a master sergeant within the Fliegenberger, the military police wing of the Nazis during the war.
Gustav, Arnold Schwarzenegger's dad, had applied for membership in the Nazi Party in 1938, just before Germany annexed Austria, and was accepted into the Nazi Party 3 years later in 1941, which by 1941, there wasn't a lot of confusion as to what the Nazis were about. And an LA Times investigation in 2003, ahead of Arnold's run for governor of California, uncovered documents in the Austrian State Archives in Vienna showing that Gustav, Arnold's dad, was more heavily involved in Hitler's regime than was previously thought. Arnold's father had been a member of the SA, otherwise known as the Stormtroopers or Brown Shirts, having joined in on May 1st, 1939, 6 months prior to Kristallnacht, or the Night of the Broken Glass, when Jewish homes, businesses, and places of worship were attacked across Germany and Austria. Now, Dyer, do you think it's possible that possibly Arnold's dad helped commit Kristallnacht? Is that a possibility?
It's very possible, since the SS was very much involved in that whole thing, and he was a member of it. So yeah.
No. Oh
yeah.
no.
Oh
no.
no. Father like, or son like father, I guess. The documents also reveal that Gustav served in the uniformed armed forces of the Nazi Party, known as the Wehrmacht, and fought in some of the most brutal theaters of war, including the invasion of Poland and France, as well as the siege of Leningrad. By the way, I want to point out when the essay, what?
Leningrad,
sorry. When the SS were going into these conflicts, their job was the extermination portion after the conquering as well. So they go through and take all the Jews and make the mass graves. They were the ones, not the regular soldiers. It was the SA going through and doing the exterminations. So in Poland and France, Poland particularly, is famous for the mass graves that were made by the SS. So I just want to point that out. While the report noted there was no way of knowing the role played by, I mean, come on. They had one.
He might have been Dyer. He might have been one of the good ones.
One of the good SS.
He was one of the guys who had the skull on his lapel and looked at it and thought, "Huh, I must be one of the goodies. I can't possibly be the baddies."
Yeah, like everyone else around me is going up, rounding up Jews, Polish Jews, and shooting them in mass graves, but not me. I'm just standing by and disapproving of it all.
But our symbol is a skull. Are we the baddies? We couldn't possibly be the baddies. There's no way.
There is no member of the SA that was not involved in the atrocities.
I would guess that probably would have been a hazing / initiation, that like everybody would have had to partake in that sort of stuff at one point or another. I would guess that. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah,
but it would be surprising if he was in the SA. If he was a stormtrooper and he didn't do any of the atrocities, he would be like literally the only stormtrooper that didn't. He would be. Yeah, you'd just be like the only one.
So the regular Nazi army, the regular German army, they were recruited and they fought and they followed the orders to do terrible things. The SA, the SS, they were recruited because they were the radicals who were true believers of the philosophy of the Nazi Party. And they were the ones willing to do the most evil things. They were handpicked for that purpose. So no, there's a guarantee that if they picked him, it's because they're picking him to do those atrocities. So while the report noted that there's no way of knowing the role played by Schwarzenegger's father, Holocaust scholar Michael Berenboom noted that Gustav, I don't care, appeared to have been in the thick of the battle during most of the difficult times, in conflicts where some of the most horrific military and non-military killings took place.
Oh boy. Gustav Schwarzenegger later rose to the rank of Master Sergeant in the Flugzeugträger military police, which was the German. He was basically a German MP, who often served as combat troops deployed on the front line to suppress civilians from marching on the advancing German forces. So you had there's a separation between the German forces, as Dyer was describing, and then the stormtroopers who were handling the civilian portion of the invasion and doing stuff with the civilians. So, it's probably pretty likely that he was he was doing some bad stuff, not good stuff.
Now, it has been debated how close Arnold actually was with his father. But either way, it would appear that Gustavo was successful in conveying his value system to his son Arnold.
Yes,
Because, screw your freedoms, right?
Exactly. Screw your freedoms. The authoritarian apples do not fall very far from their tree.
Yes. Arnold can run his mouth all day if he wants, but he currently does not hold any political power. Meanwhile, the authoritarians that do hold office are very hard at work. Blue cities are locking down again. Mask mandates are even for the vaccinated are coming back and will include school children. And recently, Biden said that this administration is exploring the possibility of requiring vaccine passports to travel between state borders, which is, that might cause a revolution. It will definitely cause a schism and a breaking apart of America.
Yeah. So, it's some people might think like, oh, it's a coincidence or this time's different. But I kind of look at this and it's like, okay, well, I don't really think it's a coincidence. It looks to be Arnold's father had some values and some thoughts of the value of freedom, and it appears that Arnold also has those same thoughts and values. Whether or not he got them from his father might be debatable. I just thought that it was interesting to bring to you all the coincidence that a son of a Nazi has some authoritarian leanings and is doesn't really like freedom that much. So screw the Nazis, screw Arnold. I do like my freedom. Anybody who's looking at you and like mocking like, oh, but your freedom, they will be the first. That's all I'm going to say.
So I also want to point out, why are we listening to Arnold in the first place? His record of spousal and girlfriend abuse, as well as rape and sexual assault, puts Cuomo to shame.
Yeah, but he loved them, Dyer. I wonder where he learned that from. I bet you learned that from his dad too.
Alcoholic Nazi father.
Yeah,
possibly.
Possibly. Oof. Okay, so our next story, rushing through here. So, nothing is more precious than the love of Andrew. No, nothing is more precious than the love of a quote human milk feeding individual and their fourth trimester fetus. It's adorable. Beautifully well written, Dyer. It's essentially poetry. I'm brought back to my days of reading poetry and the great Shakespearean plays. Okay, so the Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine has found a way to one-up the dehumanizing of the term birthing people. The new official term is human milk feeding individuals, which you guys will remember us talking about birthing people a few months ago when they decided to rename mothers to be birthing people, and then now they've further dehumanized it as human milking individuals, which implies that there are other non-human milk feeding individuals and also human milk feeding collectives, possibly. I think that also seems to be a possibility because of the specificity here.
I wish that this story was false. I wish the last story on the same topic was false. I wish this wasn't in the news or what the left was really trying to do to our society. But this is not the Babylon Bee, which is actually the source for this article. They also have the initial source from the Daily Wire. So the not Babylon Bee wrote this: "We're done. We can wrap up our civilization up now. This is where future archaeologists will say we passed beyond the event horizon and we woke in the woke black hole that is consuming us all." Again, the left is attempting to remove even the idea of women and females from society. This and the removal of women's spaces, women's bathrooms, women's spas, women's sports. The putting in men into women's sports so that now no women will be able to win any women's sports anymore. It'll just be men winning all of women's sports.
To be fair, I kind of support that because it would make women's sports worth watching and kind of interesting.
It will definitely make more money. Um,
I mean, are we protesting too much? Is it possible that like women's sports would actually become watchable if there's more men involved?
is there something perverse about paying money to watch a man just give women fractured skulls over and over again?
I mean, if you're into that sort of stuff, I guess. I don't know. That's not my forte. I think that the human milk feeding individuals is kind of speciesist against otherkin. I feel like on the progressive stack, I think that otherkin are the most oppressed because they're the ones that are least referenced.
Yes, definitely.
I think that if we got any otherkins out there, the otherkins need to be you guys. If we're doing this whole progressive stack thing, you guys need to be sitting there fighting for your rights on this too. If this is the route that we're going, then I want the left to have to live with the otherkins.
Yeah.
You guys need to be. If the left is going to win anyways, you guys got to fight harder. And then and you guys fighting harder, maybe that makes the left lose in general. So otherkin power.
The left always makes the argument that, all words are made up. Yeah, but see, when new words are created, it's generally because they convey a new idea, something more complicated than already existed, and it required a term to refer to that new idea or this new amalgam of ideas in a certain combination in a specific context, right? It's developing the language, adding to the language, you're creating something new. Whereas this change to language is just making things so complicated, and yet at the same time less intelligible.
Yeah.
It's removing information.
So to try to briefly do some extremely high level kind of linguistic theory, the words are meant to convey ideas. So the words are, in an analogy, the words are roads, and your idea is the car. The left has mistaken the road for the car. They've mistaken the words for the ideas. And so their effort is to try to continuously change the words in order to change the ideas being conveyed. But all they've really done is take this wonderful, efficient highway system of language that we have, where all of these ideas are able to easily transfer back and forth across the words that we use across the interstates. And all they've done is just mixed up the roads and just made them go in a bunch of different areas. And it's really hard to navigate anywhere. It'd be like if you're in a city and all the roads just went random places, and there would be no way to actually get your car to the other side of the city. And back to linguistics, because they've mixed up the words so thoroughly, it's nearly impossible to get your idea into the mind of the person that you're talking to, because the left has so bastardized the language, which is really, that's kind of the goal. If you look at a lot of dystopic fiction and a lot of the propagandistic aims of authoritarians, especially Marxism, the goal is to baffle humans. The goal is to create essentially a Tower of Babel situation where the language has become useful for the purpose of conveying ideas. You would no longer be able to use words to convey the ideas that you're attempting to convey. That was the whole idea behind Newspeak in 1984. If they continuously clipped down the language, all of a sudden it just became impossible to convey any kind of ideas. And the term of woman, Sargon has talked a lot about this. The word woman is a thick concept. If you say, oh, somebody's a woman, or no, it's mother. The term mother is a very thick concept. Woman is too, but mother has a lot of information packed into that one word. You've got, okay, so she's, she has a child. She probably has somebody who fathered that child. Yeah, she probably is a caregiver. She is a woman. She's a girl. So there's all kinds of stuff that like goes in with just that one word. And the left, because they want to destroy the concept, they have made new words to try to baffle the idea of the thick concept of what a mother is. They want it to just be stripped down to a milk machine, essentially, which is so humanizing of women, to that they used to be this mother concept, this concept of mother, which has all of these different connotations to it, and they want to strip all those connotations out. They want to strip everything that makes it special about being a mother, and just, you are merely a meat sack which gives milk to a smaller meat sack. Congratulations.
Yeah, so in addition to intentionally baffling the language, they also at the same time are making taboos out of words that represent ideas, thus making it so culturally you're not allowed to say those things, which means you're not allowed to convey those ideas, meaning it that you are actually removing concepts from the language, which in a generation removes the concepts from the society. It makes society dumber because they don't have words to convey certain ideas that are now taboo.
They don't have words to convey ideas.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. So, yep, we'll do that story another time. All right.
Yep.
Next story. All right, guys, it's happening. It's time to panic. Florida COVID spike. Panic. Ah! Panic. Okay. So, from the New York Post, lots and lots of panic this week of the Florida CDC numbers. So the New York Post says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention adjusted its COVID-19 tracking for the state. Get out of here. COVID-19 tracking for the state of Florida on Tuesday as confusion over reporting practices sparked a feud between federal and state authorities. Oh no. What could that feud possibly have been? After the CDC website showed a record high number for Sunday, August 8th, the Florida Department of Health balked, accusing the CDC of folding several days worth of new cases into one day. Oh. The gap was significant, with the CDC initially claiming that there was 28,317 new cases on Sunday, while the Florida Department of Health puts that number at 15,319. That's a lot of, that's like 1,300 or 13,000 extra cases. Yeah, 13,000 extra cases the CDC reported on. That's not a small detail.
Yeah. On Tuesday, the CDC adjusted its numbers down to 19,584. Big whoops, I guess, by 9,000. It's up to you. You covered you did my part.
Oh, did I? Okay. Let's see here. So after the initial CDC numbers were released, a deluge. Republicans pounce. Republicans pounce. After CDC numbers were released, a deluge
Because you lied?
of negative press directed at Florida and Governor Ron DeSantis ensued, leading the Florida Department of Health and other officials to take to Twitter to decry the error. How dare they decry the error? Let's see here. They said, this is not accurate. Florida follows CDC guidelines reporting cases Monday through Friday, other than holidays. Consequently, each Monday or Tuesday, there will be 2 or 3 days of data reported at a time. When data is published, it is attributed evenly to the previous days, the agency tweeted on Monday. I believe that was the Florida agency.
Yeah.
On Tuesday,
the CDC told multiple news outlets that it was working with Florida officials to correct the inaccuracies. So wait, you were wrong then. You're admitting it then. Oopsie.
Oh, our bad. So I guess we don't have to panic now. There's not.
So there was no spike, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So like there is a bit of a spike, but there's a spike everywhere. But the doubling the spike size is a little over the top. It was not double because we're currently in a wave of spikes all across the country with the Delta variant, which whether or not that's an issue. Well, that's kind of outside the scope of today's discussion on it. We've discussed that previously. But the issue was that, Florida was, this 28,000 number was like so far in excess of what was projected.
No, the lesson here, Fox, is you're supposed to believe the science, believe the CDC. They're
trust
never
the
wrong.
Well, and what's funny is if this hadn't played out so quickly, let's say the CDC took an extra day to get around to adjusting the numbers back. Let's say they took till Wednesday. You would have actually had a situation where Twitter probably would have started banning people, probably even started banning or putting fact checks onto the Florida Health Department's Twitter, saying, well, no, the CDC numbers are correct. Like your guys are making stuff up, when that wasn't the case, because you're not allowed to question it, even if it's worthy of being questioned.
Right.
That's
And this
the
is an
danger.
example of why you need to be able to think for yourself and not just believe what someone in power says, because they're not always right. Sometimes they have a vested interest in being wrong and lying to you.
But screw your freedom, Dyer. We're in a crisis. What if they're lying
I
about
know.
the crisis?
I forgot that.
Oh.
Yeah. I forgot about when they wrote the Constitution that they were like, all this is thrown out the window when there's a crisis, right?
Yes, it's the well-known crisis provision. I think it's somewhere between the 13th and 50 dose amendment. Yeah, it's somewhere in there. Yeah, just if you look at it sideways and squint, there's actually, so people don't know this, there's actually a second and a half amendment, and you can only see it if you use Benjamin Franklin's glasses, because it's an invisible ink.
There's also a map on the back, right?
Yes, there is. So it leads to Nancy's ice cream fridge. Okay, so anything else to say on this?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, there's other stuff going on with COVID. Like we said earlier, there's discussions about interstate passports. I just don't think that's tenable. I think it's interesting and of newsworthy note that they're talking about that, but there's some other topics we want to talk about today. So instead of just having another discussion about how authoritarian they've been about COVID, we'll hold off on that this week. And if something happens concretely and not just talk, we'll talk about it next week. But that's kind of our update for the week on that. Our next story is Mayonnaise Gate. Mayonnaise is all out of gates. All right. So Trump once said famously, "It's not me they're after, it's you. I'm just in the way."
This story starts with a tweet from the North Carolina GOP. Let's take a look at it. Biden inflation strikes Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I am paying $200 more a week in mayonnaise.
Whoa.
Whoa. I mean, if he wants some mayonnaise, I can help him out for free. With a link to an article about a restaurant called The Sherwood. Sorry.
Okay, so fake news outlet The Independent compiled the response that they got on Twitter. They say from the Independent, GOP ridiculed for bizarre mayonnaise smear. That was their title. I need to see if I can pull this up here. Dyer, why don't you keep reading that while I try and pull this article up?
Okay. Something might be happening with mayo consumption in North Carolina, and implying they have way too much. Twitter users are ridiculing North Carolina Republicans for a bizarre attack on Joe Biden over inflation and condiments. So the price index is up 5.4% according to government data. That means 5.4% from last year when the market was up by a lot. The fastest surge in 13 years. I want to point out that just on the month-to-month inflation from this year, it's been on a steady growth of inflating every single month. So quick calculations by some Twitter users found there to be an increase in expenditure of $200 a week in mayonnaise. A restaurant would have to be spending approximately $3,700 a week on the condiment. That's what the calculation would be, how much you'd have to be spending for there to be a $200 increase in the price.
Well, hold on a second. You don't read what's not there, Dyer, because we're going to come back to that calculation in a second. So another tweet, quote, "This economy is rough on my fast casual all mayonnaise restaurant," making fun of him. Another tweet, taking the high end, this is the calculation. This is the Independent discussing the calculation. So the high end price, this comes in at an impressively extravagant 247 gallons of mayo usage per week. Using the low end price, it is a nauseatingly gluttonous 370 gallons of condiment. Even for someone who loves mayonnaise, that's disgusting.
Yes. So they also went in to say, somebody eating way too much mayonnaise, tweeted author Jonah Blank. And just imagine the heroic amounts of mayo this restaurant must be going through, added Facebook's Tom Gara. And yet Biden refuses to open up the strategic mayonnaise reserve, joked a Twitter user. Vox's Aaron Rupar asked, What's what designer drug is mayonnaise code for? And also a sentiment that was echoed by another Twitter user who noted, "You aren't supposed to inject it directly into the vein." So these are all the statements and arguments made by social media about this story.
And
right?
they're all so funny. Ha ha ha. This restaurant, they used 370 gallons of mayo. LOL, am I right? And here's the fact check from no other than Tim Pool. Oh wait, I don't have his tweet. There it is. I got it. Hold on a second.
He actually did some journalism.
He actually did some journalism.
He called the restaurant himself and asked for the information.
Yeah. So here goes the fact check from Tim Pool, who we hate to reference, but when he's right, he's right. So from Tim Pool, quote, "I called the Sherwood and was told by one of the partners that they use 10 separate 5-gallon buckets per week, so 50 gallons. It is used for all of their dressings, so not just straight mayo, but mixing mayo with other stuff as a cooking ingredient. The restaurant capacity is 250. I'm guessing 250 people. And then each bucket of mayonnaise used to be $18, and it is now $36.
If you do the math,
that was Tim actually calling, not just making fun of somebody without asking. He actually called the original people and asked them about their mayo budget, which nobody else did. None of the Twitter users did that. The Independent didn't do that. There was a dozen other mainstream media articles. I think the New York Times did a smear piece on them, saying how stupid this restaurant was for thinking that they were paying an extra $200 for mayonnaise. None of them called. None of them called except for Tim.
So if you do the math he laid out there, that's an extra $18 times 10 buckets equaling $180 a week. Throw in some taxes and shipping cost, and you get your $200 per week, an additional cost for mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. It's a lot of mayonnaise. So where did Twitter and all the mainstream media go so wrong? Well, they assumed that the 5.2% inflation was uniform across every product.
Which they should know is not true.
Idiots, absolute idiots, don't understand that the CPI is an average of a bunch of different products, and some of those products had higher inflation, higher than 5.2, and some of them had lower than 5.2% inflation.
Yeah, you just look at the gasoline. Was up like last month. I think it was 46%. There's some things that are up over 50%. Yeah, it's just an average of many products. Some things, like you save 16 cents on your barbecue, right? Some things didn't go up that much, so that's why there's an average of 5.2. These are the same idiots that cheered when Biden tried to claim that your 4th of July cookout was 16 cents cheaper this year by cherry-picking some of the cookout items that had lower inflation or had not inflated.
And now, because the narrative must be the Biden economy is strong, a bunch of idiots who can't do math are now harassing the owner of the Sherwood. He must now be canceled because he said a true thing about reality, and that just can't be. We cannot have reality conflict with the narrative.
Yes. We've heard that facts can be racist and data can be racist or sexist, and that we shouldn't be referencing facts or data, just our feelings, right?
Yeah.
And I feel the economy is doing great. So any data that says I'm wrong, well, that would make me feel bad. So it can't be right.
Well, so this is a very similar situation to what a lot of other authoritarian regimes have done in the past and in the current present, where the people suffering, if they acknowledge their suffering, or if they're even affected by their suffering, if they're unable to go to work because they're starving to death because the economy has totally collapsed, they will typically, in an authoritarian regime, you will use this bastardized concept of patriotism. Like, well, you must not be patriotic because you're starving to death. You must not be patriotic because in North Korea, just everybody is just filled with parasites, and they can't actually digest anything, and then they fall over on the job and they can't work, and it's like, okay, well, you guys just must not have patriotism. This poor business owner can't afford mayo anymore because Biden has wrecked the economy. Oh, well, he's just not being patriotic by recognizing that. And so this seems to be when the authoritarians cause such suffering with the people, and then the people recognize that. It is a hallmark of an authoritarian regime that the people are punished or called out for having recognized their suffering, their own suffering. So, like I said, like Trump said, it's not Trump that they were after. They're after us. Trump was just in the way. And now this poor guy, and Tim spoke at length about his interview with the one of the owners of the Sherwood, and they have a pretty highly targeted Twitter and Yelp campaign against their business now, doing all kinds of hit pieces against them. You've got all kinds of people and mainstream media outlets going after them, calling them stupid and saying they're idiots for using that much mayonnaise. And this guy said when he was doing the interview with the local news about how much more the mayonnaise was costing, or how much just an interview about how inflation and the economy was hitting restaurant owners. He wasn't saying anything political. He said he's not even very active in politics at all. He was just, somebody asked him like, oh, well, how's the current economy like affecting you as a restaurant owner? And he's like, oh, this, that, it's probably hard to find workers, and, mayonnaise is a little more expensive. And he didn't think anything of it. And because he said something they didn't even think anything of, now he's got to be canceled for it. This is the goalpost getting moved down. At first it was the Gamergate people. You can go all the way back to that. Then it was, comics people, and then it was conservatives. It was Alex Jones, and then it was lighter conservatives, and then now it's everybody who's a conservative on YouTube or just doesn't toe the company line, and then it's just anybody who has a question about Dr. Fauci, and then now it's, oh, if you're just a regular non-combatant in the political war and you just trying to own your small business, and all of a sudden you recognize like, hey, the economy kind of sucks and mayonnaise got expensive. Now you need to be canceled too. First they came for, and at this point, maybe this wouldn't have happened to him if he had been a little more politically active. I've got some friends who've said to me even recently, oh, I'm not really into this whole political, the culture war kind of a thing. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm sure this guy wasn't really in the political or the culture war either, but it came and found him. And
you don't have a choice. You're in the war. You're in the culture. You exist within the culture. Thus, what happens to it will happen to you, whether you choose to be actively involved or not.
So this is definitely won't be the last random guy that just gets selected for the week and is punished for his non-devotion to the regime.
Nazi fags.
How dare you?
Jews in the...
Why would you do that?
The journalists don't only lack the ability to understand the consumer price index. They also don't know how to understand journalism. Not a single journalist went to the original primary source to find out the information. They are idiots.
Yes, they are. Thank you for the $10, Triumvirate. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Anything else to say on that, Dyer?
Nope. Let's move on.
All right. So I don't have a picture for this one.
Oh.
I have the picture of the foxes in cages. I think that one's
do
pretty
that.
sad.
Let's go with that.
All right. I'll pull it up in a second here.
In the arms of an angel.
My God. Okay. You want to read while I'm trying to find this?
Yeah, sure. So when Trump was in office, he was condemned as a racist for putting migrant children, quote, in cages, just like these foxes, looking sad in cages. It didn't matter that
Joe
those
Biden
cages.
did this to them.
Look what Biden did. Look at these foxes. No human, no moral man could do this to a fox. All right. It didn't matter that those cages, otherwise known as temporary holding facilities for migrants awaiting processing after crossing the border illegally, were built by the Obama-Biden administration.
It didn't matter that the policy of separating migrant children from their parents was enacted by the Obama-Biden administration and ended under the Trump administration.
It didn't matter that Trump's policies uniformly worked towards reducing the amount of migrants being housed in U.S. facilities, increasing the funding for those facilities, and creating a more humane and safe way for processing asylum claims without encouraging further illegal immigration.
It didn't matter that the media had to use pictures from the Obama-Biden administration in their articles attacking Trump. No, Trump was a monster for running a concentration camp, like AOC said when she went to go stare at a parking lot.
Empty parking lot.
Yes.
and then pretended to cry during a photo op. So Trump policies, like the Remain in Mexico policy, slowed illegal border crossings drastically, despite the Democrats attempting to sabotage his efforts at every turn. In July of 2020, border crossings were at 89,000, which was up from the previous year, double from the previous year. July of this year, there was 200,000 illegal crossings under Biden. Biden, in his first month in office, ended all of the policies that slowed border crossings and stopped the construction of the border wall. These actions and the actions he's taken since then had led to border control facilities being completely overwhelmed with many thousands of immigrants from all over the world, including the Middle East, crossing the border every single day.
Man, under Trump, the highest number of migrant children held in detention was 2,600. Under Biden, the highest number of children held in detention has been 5,500 so far. If they thought 2,500 kids in cages was bad, how much worse is more than twice that many kids in the same number of facilities? Probably stacking them on top of each other at this point.
In fact, they are the exact same facilities, not similar. They're the exact same facilities. So you can see how this would create unsanitary and inhumane conditions if they said it was inhumane and unsanitary with 2,500. More than twice that should be more than twice as unsanitary and inhumane, right? But no, the media just doesn't cover it anymore. It has even resulted in the Biden administration being sued in federal court this last Monday by lawyers representing a group of those migrant children.
In their lawsuit before the U.S. District Court in Los Angeles, the attorneys accused the Biden administration of causing mental distress to the children by subjecting them to substandard conditions with prolonged stays and inadequate services.
It's also important to remember that the Biden admin is discussing new lockdowns, as we mentioned in the previous story, and the removal of some of our civil liberties and adding more restrictions to where we can go, what we can do, due to COVID-19. These migrants that are being dropped off in 17 different states without being vaccinated or subjected to any COVID-19 restrictions. Yet he's talking about imposing lockdowns where we can't go from state to state, but they can. He's saying we can't go to restaurants. We can't go anywhere without being vaccinated or having a mask on, but they are being held to these requirements. And he's then adding, because they are coming here with COVID-19, he's adding COVID-19 into those communities and then blaming them for the rise, because Florida is one of those states. So he's putting COVID positive migrants into Florida and then blaming them for having cases of COVID.
Well, Dyer, I mean, trying to find cause and effect, that'd be like trying to do like some science there, and you're not authorized to do science. Only Fauci.
I can't think for myself.
Yes, you're not allowed to do that. Let's see here. Where are we at here? It is also important to remember that when they tell us we need to be militarily engaged in the Middle East to protect against the next 9/11, they have just dropped off thousands, well, millions, we're getting close into the millions, of Middle East and African migrants with no background checks, no restrictions, and no tracking. Great.
So it's thousands of those two areas. It's millions of migrants total. But yes, and it's very possible, because we aren't able to check, that these people that are coming from Afghanistan to Mexico to then sneak across our border probably are not just refugees. If they're refugees,
the more they do this, the less, and I think we're well past it now, the less and less possibility we have of some kind of blanket amnesty. Maybe we could have done that 10 years ago and then actually shut down the border. But at this point, I mean, we're based off the numbers we're seeing and what we know the numbers have been over the last few years. Obviously, the both administrations or both parties for the last 20 years have been using the 11 million illegals in the country. They've been using 11 million for 20 years. We've had on average over 1 million per year. This year we've had over 1 million in 6 months. I would say that you're looking at like 40 to 50 million illegal migrants in the country right now. At this point, it's becoming so untenable that you're going to get a situation where the only option is mass roundups and deportations. I'm really not seeing a way around that. I just am not. I don't even know if I'm advocating for it or not yet, but I don't see how you're going to be able to have a solution without something like that. And the more they do this, the more likely that becomes. And I think the Democrats right now, I think that their escape hatch is just, well, if they can get over a certain threshold now, well, then they can just scoop up extra votes every time and they'll just perpetually have power forever. But if that grip ever gets loosened, if the Democrats are unable to convert that mass illegal migration into votes and maintaining their political power, then the only solution for Republicans or for really conservatives to have any future for the next century is these people have to get out of there. We have to do something about it.
Well, since you brought it up, I have to make 2 points. The first one is that it is not debatable. It is completely true that there is an economic and social cost to this immigration. There is crime this is allowing to happen. There's the drug trade, there's human trafficking, and there's also criminals who are preying on American citizens. There are people there's a long list of people who've died directly because of the lack of enforcing of our immigration. There's a social cost and there's economic cost. We spend billions of dollars every year, many billions of dollars as a cost of illegal immigration, services they're using or services for taking care of them, housing them, all those things. So there is, and also there is the restrictions on our job market, which is not currently the problem, the biggest problem with our job market. But there's a social and economic
essentially
cost.
You have the equivalent of a medium-sized country. I mean, 50 million, even if it was 25 million, is a fairly large country. I mean, you're talking about being up in like probably the top 50 countries.
But of low-wage workers is the worst part.
Well, yeah, but it's this like zombie nation within ours where they aren't actually like full participants in society, but they can still drag it down. They can still disrupt the supply and demand economics, which affects everybody. They affect the government policy and welfare policy, and it's just not sustainable in any way with what America is supposed to be. And unfortunately, the Democrats doing this is going to, and again, I'm not advocating for it. My concern is that you're going to have a lot of people who there'll be a strong man that rises up and says, I can fix this by doing X, Y, and Z to these people. And I think you're going to have a lot of people that are in such economic dire straits. We've seen this over and over again throughout history. That is how you make a population susceptible to somebody coming in and saying, I can fix these problems if you elect me. And maybe they do get elected, and maybe they do something about these people. And the left has engineered that possibility. And unfortunately, the alternative to that is just that the left is able to capitalize on this illegal immigration, and they get to maintain their power forever, and you, the regular citizen, are just suffer perpetually as a result.
Okay, so it is a measurable a negative effect on our society. If you were to stop immigration right now, illegal immigration, and give enough time, that you could make it so that those people no longer are a drag on the society, but we have a constant flow of people coming in, constantly dragging down our economy and having these social and economic negatives to society, right? So how do you deal with it? There's three ways that you can address the problem. Assuming you could stop all of the illegal immigration today, how would you deal with the 40 plus million people who are causing this effect, this negative effect to our society? First one, the authoritarian approach that would be the most inhumane would be rounding people up and removing them. That'd be the most effective but most authoritarian way of doing it.
I don't know that that's authoritarian though. I think depending on what you do with them after you round them up might be authoritarian, but I think just
comparatively.
I mean,
let me finish my point.
Okay.
How about that?
Right.
So that compared to the other options, that is the most authoritarian. The second one would be what the Democrats want, which is to make them citizens and just continue to deal with those negative effects, right? And they'd probably just want to leave the gates open too. That's the second option. Also, that's the worst option because there's just it's cementing those negative effects. The third option, which would be for what is more likely to happen, but not the best solution, I still don't think, is they would let them stay in this bastardized non-citizen status and only remove those who are problems as they commit crimes and then are arrested and deported. Is there a fourth option you can think of?
No. Well, no. Not
yeah. So
on the show. But.
So, I mean, okay, not concentration camps and stuff like that.
No, I'm just saying that is where things like this go. Is that it becomes so untenable for the population, they will just say, I don't care what you do with them. It is not survivable anymore. Somebody's got to do something about them, and somebody will step in and say, I'm the one to do something about it, and they'll do it. That is what happens when you destabilize a society to this point. And if that ever happens, it doesn't matter if I support it or not. I don't think that we'd be able to stop it. It would just happen. That is a deep concern. That is a deep concern for all of these people. The reason why I bring that up is because I wouldn't want that to happen.
They created a problem that I do not envy the people who have to solve, because the longer it goes on, the least humane it is for Americans and for them.
You kind of asked the question earlier about how long would it take to kind of integrate the people that are already here. Let's say let's just call it 30 million.
It's a long time.
I'm thinking more than a century. I mean, you're talking about multiple generations.
Yes.
I don't trust. America has been unable to maintain a cohesive policy on anything for longer than 4 years. Whatever we do would have to be something that had immediate effects and a long-term unable to reverse it effect. Otherwise, we would just do it for a year and then we would stop doing it the next election cycle. I mean, that's what happened with the wall. The wall was a long-term American plan 25 years ago, and it's still not done. We finally had a guy who said,
"That's a great example."
Yeah. So if we had a plan, if let's say we stopped immigration right now, is okay. No one's coming back in the country at all. We're done. And then here's our new plan for assimilation. We would do that for all of 2 years and then we would stop. So that it's not a realistic solution to have. Well, we're just going to naturally integrate them over time, because the time span that you're talking about is so absurdly long, and we just wouldn't do it. It's just America is a squirrel. We are completely unable to focus on any long-term goals other than increasing the national debt. That seems to be the only long-term goal we've ever been able to accomplish.
My cynical nature thinks that the GOP, if they ever got power, would do the second, like, half, not even a half, a 1/10 measure of, okay, we're going to stop new illegal immigration, and we're just going to remove people as they commit crimes. That's what I think the GOP have the balls to do.
I don't think that helps. I
don't think it helps either.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to fix the problem. I think it's all they would be willing to do, though.
I don't even think they'd be willing to do that.
Okay, but you're possibly right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm giving too much credit.
Well, look at the next story that we've got is the Taliban taking over Afghanistan officially as of a couple hours ago, and you had the Afghan security forces just immediately surrendered and allowed them to take over, and it seems very reminiscent of ICE. We have a law enforcement agency that's supposed to protect the border, and as soon as a new president came in and said we're going to do the opposite to protect the border, they all said okay, yes sir, and gave him a salute and started human trafficking. The entirety of ICE is like not just criminal, but like treasonous. All of the ICE officers right now have committed treason. So you've got this issue where I don't know. Like, the country is in such shambles right now, Dara. I don't know that there's any structures left with which to address the situation. Like, are we going to use ICE and just the same guys that were human trafficking children into Nevada last month? You know, as soon as we get a new president, they're going to be the ones defending the border again. I don't think that they can be trusted. I think that the next Republican administration would have to dismantle and rebuild ICE, along with a lot of other agencies. We just have a situation where, it would be great if we could think of a plan or a strategy to try to rapidly assimilate these people, but just the government is such Swiss cheese right now, and all of the bureaucracy is 100% geared towards making life miserable for the citizen and violating the Constitution. None of it designed to actually strengthen the country. None of it designed to actually help out the citizen or to protect their rights. There is no mechanisms of government that exist right now that are capable of, in any capacity, having some kind of assimilation program. And so what would the solution to be? Pass a bill where we create a new organization, a new bureaucracy, a new agency that's the assimilation agency, and they help, and we just create a new government structure, and then we just add on to the layers of bureaucracy. That is the issue that we're at right now, where the problems are so vast and the governmental infrastructure so degraded. We might be past the Rubicon of some of these problems being solvable. Like, these problems might just be unsolvable at this point, which does not bode well for the future. That does not bode well for the future.
At best case scenario, I think that if you were to fix the continuation of the problem in some way now, maybe a very, very different America, if it still exists in 100 years, you might have gotten past the effects of the immigrants have come in this last century.
Well, but Trump essentially did that, right? I mean, Trump not down to zero, but quite a bit. He shrank the immigration numbers substantially. Not by nearly enough, but substantially. And essentially, all of the immigrants that were, on average, prevented from coming into the country the last 4 years, almost half of them have gotten back into the country in the last 6 months because of Biden. Biden just opened the floodgates. Yeah. We've essentially, if you were to average it out, Biden's almost made up the distance for how many immigrants Trump prevented from coming in. Biden's made up the difference by adding extra ones coming in. So,
economically speaking, all you could do is offset the damage that was done by having other things that are economically positive happen. You wouldn't be able to remove the cause very easily. Right?
Yeah, but it would require some kind of a constitutional amendment, to the extent that that's even anything. And that's the problem too. Is so what? Like, let's make a constitutional amendment that has some kind of magic clause that solves the problem if read out in a certain way, and it creates this structure, this set of laws or whatever. Anyways, but the Constitution is not followed either. That's why I'm saying, like, there is no mechanism that it has not been degraded that would actually be capable of addressing this. I think, I got back to my point that Trump tried to lower the immigration, and then just Biden immediately zoomed it back up. So I agree with you. Yeah, start would be, let's get immigration low, preferably down to zero, but there's no mechanism that keeps that in place for longer than a couple of years. And then we're right back to square one. And this might just be one of the many things that's unsolvable that leads to like the great collapse is the problem.
Well, that's very black pilling. Let's move on to the next black pilling story. It gets worse, guys.
No, this one's not very black. This one's just kind of like, I don't know, this one's like a transparent pill. I'm more of a spectator on this one. All right, so
it has a different effect on me. Sorry.
Okay. Just remember, Biden put these adorable foxes into cages, and if you've learned nothing else, Biden hates cute foxes. All right, so
Yes. And he's allowing the hunting of wolves.
yes, that is true. Okay, so the Taliban has very excited. I'm very excited, Dyer. You should be excited too. The Taliban is doing what Ron DeSantis won't, and they're enforcing a mask mandate. This is very exciting. Very proud of them.
Oh wow, so progressive,
Yeah,
brave,
so progressive. So
so
yeah, so
empowered.
well, I guess it's not Afghanistan anymore. I think that they've renamed it already. It's now the Emirates, like the Afghani Emirates or something now. They've renamed it already. This is a very evolving situation. If you guys have not heard, we officially withdrew this week, and officially as of about 4 hours ago, Afghanistan fell, and the Taliban is now in complete control. The the former Afghani president that was installed by America has resigned and fled the country, and the Taliban have already installed a new president, which I think that they don't know what a president means, but they now have a new president. And I believe, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's got the word Emirates in it, and they've renamed the country already.
I don't know. We installed a president too, didn't we?
Yeah, I know. So again, this is all like, if you guys probably heard a little bit about stuff that was going on, but like literally some of this stuff happened like around the time that we started the stream. Like this is like very, very much developing. So we're gonna bring some of the highlights for you guys, and then have some commentary on it and just kind of discuss it in general. But if you're looking for a well scripted out timeline of what's happened, not a chance we're gonna be able to do that today. Not today, as very much a developing situation. So Afghanistan represents a just absolute failure of American policy. And there's a lot of things that we will not learn from that, as we never do. As we never do. One of those things would be nation building just doesn't work. America has tried over and over again to install Western-style democracies in countries with vastly different cultures and values, aka no values. And we have failed every time. We could give you many examples, but the best example is unfolding right before your eyes as we speak. The American installed government of Afghanistan has fled the country in exile. Their military has surrendered and given over an arsenal of modern weaponry to a terrorist organization that have aspirations of global dominance. But I think the question that's on everybody's minds is presented here by Michael Malice. Dyer, I agree with him. I am very confused. Is the Afghan debacle, is it due to systemic racism or to climate change? I think that is the, if we're going to learn anything about this, I think it would be best learned if we had the context of whether or not it was systemically racist or if it was climate change.
Well, see, I don't know. Is it racism that makes the Middle Eastern people kill Middle Eastern people and rape kids, or is it the climate change that makes Middle Eastern people kill Middle Eastern people and rape kids? I'm not sure.
I think the killing is racism and the rape is climate change.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to go with.
They're hot under the collar. I get it. Okay.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is a very disorganized section, so I'll let Dyer take over. Okay, am I reading this?
So Biden says it wasn't possible for this to happen, by the way. So we have a video clip of him saying very confidently that the well-equipped Afghan military would not fall.
Yeah, and just kind of like a brief timeline. What was it? Last night, so about 12 hours ago, the Taliban, like throughout the past week, the Taliban basically took over the rest of the country. Kabul is the capital of Afghanistan. They hadn't gotten to Kabul yet, but they were getting there. And then last night they finally reached Kabul. The Afghani military immediately surrendered, all of the Afghani government officials, to the extent that they could, they have fled to other countries in the region or to Europe. And then as of this afternoon, the Taliban had made it inside of the presidential palace, which, again, I think the Middle East has an issue with the word president and what that means.
I want to point out that this video, you're going to see his statement is from 8 July. But on 1 July, the Taliban had already started their campaign. They had already looted American military bases that had been abandoned during our withdrawal, which had left many military vehicles and many military weapons left on our bases for them to steal, that there was no attempt to actually to remove them. And they'd already attacked Afghani government sites and cities. So the Taliban army was already on the move, and that's why the reporter knew to ask this question. It was already known the Taliban was overthrowing the Afghan government slowly, going city to city and base to base in 1 July and prior.
I believe the answer is no, howitzer. All right, let's listen to Biden here.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000
now Taliban troops,
as well equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
So
But
what
they-
is
but
the
they
level
did.
of
Yeah,
confidence
they did.
that they have that it will not collapse?
The Afghan government and leadership has to come together.
I got to appreciate her very classy pivot on that. It was a very well thought out pivot of, well, if Biden's going to lie and say that this report that clearly came out is saying the Biden administration's intelligence report that the Afghan government was going to collapse, and then Biden just blatantly says, nope, they didn't say that. They said it's not going to collapse. And then she pivots to say, well, how confident are they that it's not going to collapse, knowing that there is no report that talks about the confidence of it not collapsing, because there's a report that exists that says it's confident that it will collapse. So now Biden is going to have to just completely make something up on the fly.
Yep.
And we all know how good he is at doing that.
Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place.
And do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam, with some people feeling...
None whatsoever. Zero. What you had is you had entire brigades breaking through the gates of our embassy. 6, if I'm not mistaken. The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability.
They're more capable.
No circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable. So the question now is, where do they go from here? That the jury is still out. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
I'll bet you by tomorrow that the Taliban will be releasing videos and pictures from within our embassy.
So that was a statement from Joe Biden from so long ago. It's not like July was what, 1 million years ago?
Yeah,
at least. So here's one from just 100,000 years ago on April 14th. I'll mind you that today is April 15th. Let's see what Biden has to say here.
Will not conduct a hasty rush to the exit. We'll do it responsibly, deliberately, and safely.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not.
Do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in
This is
Vietnam?
a
With some
video
people
from
None whatsoever.
late last night.
Zero. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan.
No.
Not at all.
Oh no.
The likelihood
extremely comparable, isn't it?
Taliban
Oh no.
everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
So again, the unlikelihood of the Taliban owning the whole country. Like I said, the Taliban has installed a president already and is in the presidential palace.
Fox. Just because the Taliban has, put in place their own president, and just because they have military control of every single major city in Afghanistan, and just because they're controlling who enters and exits the country, and just because they have all the weapons, the guns, the planes, and the ground-to-air rockets, doesn't mean they're in charge. Right?
Oh.
Like,
I
it's
guess
obviously
I guess I misunderstood what being in charge meant.
Yeah, like obviously, like Biden is not in charge of anything, so but he's president.
Don't you bear
go
some responsibility for the outcome if the Taliban ends up back in control and women end up losing the
No, I
rights?
don't. Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility.
Seems, Joe Biden, zero responsibility, Joe. Wolf 336 sent us a lemon, much appreciated, and then he also sent us a Biden sniffing children gif, which is unappreciated. Okay, so good news for Biden. There's a little bit of silver lining here, although I think the silver for Joe is quite a bit there. He better be careful; Hillary might steal it. Joe Biden's 50-year record of being absolutely 100% wrong on every foreign policy position he's ever held remains unbroken and unbeaten. Joe Biden, once again.
Good job, Biden. We're proud of you.
Yeah,
it's an impressive record to have.
Yes.
Let's clap for that, you stupid bastard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joe Biden remains, infinity and zero to making sure that
undisputed
he's
champion of being wrong.
Always wrong about every foreign policy aspect ever. Let's see here. So Dyer's going to talk a little bit about as the Afghan military collapsed immediately, they leave behind a lot of equipment, modern warfighting equipment that was given to them by now some people might tell you that the US government gave it to them, but really you guys gave it to them, us taxpayers. I've certainly paid my fair share into that. So we bought these people, to the extent that they are, all of this very fine new military equipment, and they've immediately surrendered it. And Dyer's going to tell you where it all went.
Yes. Now, Biden did point out that they had a 300,000 troops, very well-equipped troops that's great for them to have all those soldiers, right? For them to, surrender at first contact with the enemy. Not very effective. Doesn't matter how many troops you have, if they refuse to fight and they actually are loyal with the enemy.
Do you know which general was in charge of training them? Oh
God, no!
Are you saying General Milley?
No.
What do you think it is that where do you think he screwed up in training them? Do you think that he didn't teach them about white rage enough? Do you think maybe if they had just learned about more white rage that they would?
That's the problem. They didn't have enough diversity and inclusion. That's why we gave Pakistan money for gender studies, right? Because they need that. Otherwise, the American established government will fall apart if we don't have gender studies.
What we need to see from a next administration, a next Republican administration, someone like a DeSantis would be perfect since he's already former military, would be to take some of the generals like Milley and completely strip them of all of their decorations and dishonorably discharge them. That's something like that needs to happen.
It needs to be public too.
Yes,
like on stage, remove their rank and their ribbons.
Yes, no, it needs to be understood that this doesn't just happen, right? Like, so Jen Psaki has alluded to the fault lying with people like Dyer, that the foot soldiers are the reason why we failed in Afghanistan, and that's just so absurdly untrue. It is the U.S. military did everything the U.S. military was ordered to do. It's just that the orders were given by people like Milley, who didn't know what they were doing or were purposefully losing. And that needs to be reconciled with those generals being very publicly and dishonorably discharged for their incompetence. But instead, they just continue to get more ribbons and continue rising through the ranks. And then Biden's able to point to Trump, say this is Trump's fault. And then the White House was able to point at Dyer and say, you know, this is Dyer's fault. If only he had bled out more, maybe we could have won. So it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's not they actually have said that we didn't win the war. We lost it militarily. It was like the soldiers were the ones who failed to win it. No, you can't blame the soldiers when you give them a no-win scenario where the war they're in, they're not allowed to fight. If they do fight it, they'll be punished.
And yeah, the ones that
did
try to fight it are in Leavenworth right now. The ones
exactly.
that tried to win are in Leavenworth.
And there was no established context for victory. There was no situation where we would have won. It was a fool's errand from the beginning. The only appropriate response to the terrorists attacking us was to bomb them and then let them live in the rubble. So back to the topic of the things that we gave them, how we armed the Afghan military, which immediately became the Taliban military when they immediately surrendered when they were faced with the enemy. So unclassified sources calculate the American-made military assets, the real assets, physical assets, under the control of the Afghan military prior to being steamrolled by the Taliban as being a minimum of $83 billion in value. This includes, but is not limited to, because I'm not going to make a comprehensive list, was 167 aircraft, thousands of Humvees, mobile artillery, and MRAPs, which are the IED-resistant transport vehicles for troops. Then hundreds of thousands of ground-to-air rockets.
You know what's interesting about us leaving all of that behind, Dyer, is who's the remind me, who is the Secretary General?
Shoot, I looked it up. I forgot. The former head of Raytheon, though, right?
Yes. Why don't you go look that up? You should know that he's one of your bosses. Yeah. So the current Secretary General, he only has that position after Biden appointed him to that position, but it was illegal. It was, and this isn't being like hyperbolic. It was actually illegal for Biden to appoint. I can't remember what his name is. Dyer's supposed to look it up. It was actually illegal for Biden to appoint him to the Secretary General position because he was on the board of Raytheon just last year. And they actually had to pass a special exemption for him to be able to be the Secretary General, because it's kind of a conflict of interest if you're coming out of the defense industry and going right into the group that gets to choose how to use assets that you're purchasing from the defense industry. It's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. And so it's interesting that when Trump originally came up with the plan, no, that's not who it is. It's that black guy. I can't remember what his name is, though.
Yeah.
Who's the black guy?
I'm sorry. Okay, I got.
What's his position? You're really
Lloyd James Austin.
James Austin. What's his position?
He's a 4-star general, serving as United States Secretary of Defense.
Oh, okay, Secretary of Defense. There we go. That's where I went wrong at. Yeah, so Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Before Biden got in, Trump had a plan to get us pulled out by May, and part of that plan was pulling out all of our assets so that they couldn't be used against us in the future. Then all of a sudden Biden gets in. He illegally appoints Lloyd Austin, who had to leave his position as on the board of Raytheon. And then all of a sudden, the pullout decision turns into, let's abandon millions, possibly billions of dollars,
Billions.
of dollars worth of equipment. Let's just abandon it. And well, what are we going to do when we need that equipment? Well, I guess we'll have to repurchase it, won't we? And who would we repurchase it from? Well, at least some of it would be repurchased from Raytheon. And so it's interesting that as soon as a board member of Raytheon gets into a position where he's able to have influence on the decisions, we just all of a sudden abandon billions of dollars worth of equipment that we would then have to repurchase from the company that he sat on the board of just 7 months prior. This is, Dyer's not going to agree with me or make any reference to this. This is treason at the level which requires the full extent of the punishment for treason. This is such extreme corruption. I am willing to go ahead and put my foot down, and I will say this as me, as Fox. I think the 100%, the full reason why we left so many assets behind was exclusively so that we would have to repurchase them from the military-industrial complex. And people like Lloyd Austin are going to get gigantic, massive, like absurdly large kickbacks from that. Absurdly large. And guess how they're going to finance it? Well, you, the people, are going to pay for that. You, the people, are going to pay for all of that. This is one of the most nakedly corrupt things that, at a dollar value, right? There's a lot of nakedly corrupt things that the Biden administration, the elites have been doing over, many decades. But I would say this is the highest dollar value, nakedly corrupt thing that's happened in a long time.
So a business does not survive off of a single surge of purchases of their products and then no purchases moving forward. So if it doesn't, it's not really what the military industrial complex wants. Of like, oh, you buy some stuff from us and then we don't buy that thing anymore, so we no longer are getting an annual budget, right? So it is in their best interest for there to constantly be the wood chipper that is the Middle East, that constantly, instead of just dealing with the threat and just blowing up the threat, actually having ground troops in action and having bases that constantly need to be resupplied and constantly having missions that constantly require new of the same resources, that ensures that those companies survive and have a steady revenue stream. So I think it is one of the main reasons why we are doing nation building, which requires an annual budget to buy from those companies, is just so those companies can make money.
I think what happened was Trump said we're pulling out. Now, they fought tooth and nail for 4 years, and we've covered this before, where to the point where you actually had State Department officials knowingly lying, knowingly falsifying data reports that were sent to the White House to try to trick Trump into thinking that we couldn't pull out. You had the generals doing the same thing. We have that very well documented. They fought so hard to prevent Trump from stopping that wood chipper, as Dyer puts it, that would stop wood chipping all of these military assets. Because if that stops, then that stops us purchasing a steady stock of these military assets from the military industrial complex from companies like Raytheon. And I think that what ended up happening is that Trump pushed just hard enough, made just enough public commitments about it where they really were unable to back out of it. The cat was out of the bag, so to speak. And the deal for Biden was the way that he could rescue the military industrial complex out of this was, okay, you can pull out, but you got to do something to make sure that we have a steady supply of orders for the next couple of years. And the way that they did that was say, okay, well, we'll just abandon a couple $1 billion worth of stuff that we're going to have to rebuy over the next couple of years. And it'll essentially simulate, we're to recover from this, we're essentially going to have the same expenditure that we would have had we maintained our presence in Afghanistan. We would still be spending the same amount because we have to rebuy all of that equipment. I hope I'm not sounding too crazy or too conspiratorial, but I think that's what happened. Is I think that
they also armed our adversary moving forward. So now each one of those Humvees is going to require a multi-million-dollar missile to blow them up later on.
Yes. And I would say this is probably the worst version of Fast and the Furious I've ever seen, because the previous mission, Fast and Furious, which gave millions of dollars worth of guns to the drug cartels in Mexico that were then used to execute untold numbers of American citizens and American law enforcement. This is like that, but on much, much more steroids, a lot of steroids on this one, because it is inconceivable to me that all of these military assets would go through their entire usable life and not kill an American soldier or an American citizen or one of our European allies. It is highly likely that as a direct result of this, at least one of these billions of dollars worth of equipment will end up killing American soldiers at some point down the road. And that death will be directly attributable to Joe Biden, Lloyd Austin, Mark Milley, the rest of the Secretary Generals.
Gilday.
They have absolutely armed people that will eventually come back to kill Americans. And those deaths, and I don't know what the number is going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be more than one. I'm pretty sure it's going to be more than 10. You're probably going to start getting into the thousands, hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands if stuff really goes sideways. But rest assured, this equipment will, again, it's not like it was wood chipped. It wasn't destroyed. So you will simultaneously still be, as a taxpayer, paying to replace all of these assets, and then you're also going to be paying to support the fight against these assets, and then some unfortunate soldier down the line is going to pay the price in blood for these assets still being around, and he'll get killed by them.
Yeah, and for all the claiming that they want a better life for the people in Afghanistan, if your hope is for the Afghani people to throw off the shackles of this terrorist regime, I'll tell you, it's a lot harder when you arm them like this.
So this is pretty it is pretty ridiculous. This is, people need to be arrested. I think that, especially the discharges. So like I think that this is a point where like someone like a DeSantis should come in and say we are we're stripping Milley, Gilday, Lloyd. They are all going to be tried via military tribunal. They don't get a civilian court. They'll have a military tribunal as to whether or not they acted in a treasonous way, whether or not what they did was a intentional attempt at getting American soldiers killed. I don't see how, even if like someone like a Lloyd Austin, even if his motivation was to receive money, he still knowingly did something that will result in American soldiers dying. And I think that it being, his primary motivation wasn't to kill soldiers, his primary motivation was to make money, I don't think that makes his defense any better, and I think he should be tried by a military tribunal.
Yeah, and that, was accepting that you said those things and moving forward. Sound. Further things that were also... Yeah, were left behind for the Afghani military to turn over to the Taliban included hundreds of thousands of small arms of a variety of types and millions of rounds of ammo. They also seized unknown amounts of body armor, chemical warfare equipment, protective equipment, night vision goggles equipment, and so forth. This, of course, does not include the unknown but consequential amount of military American equipment that was abandoned on American military bases, but that were never actually given officially to the Afghan military. Now, I want to point out that under Trump, the plan to bring out American forces included all of Air Force approach of using every available transport aircraft to bring out all of the equipment and leave nothing behind. However, that approach was not used during the Biden withdrawal. For some reason, there was little to no effort to remove American equipment. And I'm not going to speculate why, and I don't know why. That is something that just happened.
I will speculate why, and it's what I just said. I think that Lloyd Austin got a kickback from this. I think other people in the Biden administration got a kickback from it. And I think people like Mark Milley just get a kick out of the idea of more soldiers being killed.
I do want to point out that there was the commander in charge of the a portion of the Air Force that is in charge of airlift, all the cargo aircraft, was changed out by Biden prior to, and the policy changed abruptly afterwards.
Dyer, is it like illegal or like against like military orders to allow military equipment to fall in the hands of the enemy? Like,
yeah, waste, fraud, and abuse is punishable by court-martial.
Okay, so anybody higher up in any of the branches that went along with these plans, that they're guilty of waste, fraud, and abuse, and it should be court-martialed. And I think that we should do that. Let's see here. Let's see here. So between July 2020 and July 2021 alone, 100,000 ground-to-air rockets were given to the Afghan army. On July 1st, the Taliban had seized 700 American military vehicles as they were already back at them, staring their long.
They're already back. They already were starting their long, unopposed march to Kabul.
It was clear long before Biden was asked if Afghanistan would fall that it was already in the process of collapsing. But Biden's an idiot, so he blamed Trump instead of, I don't know, reading or anything. I don't know. I mean, this is one of the problems where you've got a commander-in-chief who is not capable of commanding, who I don't think that I'm. Yeah, there's a lot of kind of right-wing propaganda, kind of overblowing or memeing on how incompetent and unstable Biden is. But at the end of the day, a lot of it's true. And Joe Biden is not mentally capable of commanding a military. And he's not capable of receiving intel and coming to rational, complex conclusions about the intel that he's seeing before him, how it relates to intel that he's seen in the past. As we pointed out earlier, it's kind of a joke, but it's also very true. Throughout we have a lot of data on Joe Biden and how he's responded to various foreign entanglements because he's been in government since the 80s. We know what he's done and said about events, and we can look at how those events ended up playing out to see whether he was right or wrong. And he has a long history of being precisely wrong. Like beyond like the statistical just guessing at random and being wrong 50% of the time. No, he's statistically guaranteed to always choose the correct or the incorrect one. He somehow has never been correct, even by accident. And so you put a person like that who is now in a severe mental decline, somebody who, when they did have their faculties with them, was unable to rationally or correctly interpret foreign events. They now have no ability to maintain thoughts in their heads for more than a couple of minutes, and much less remembering intel that they saw the day before. And they're now in charge of the military. And what that means is that they're not really in charge of the military. So who's in charge of the military? Well, you have people like Lloyd Austin, who is representing the military-industrial complex. We are now at the absolute peak of the military-industrial complex, not just using intermediaries to control the wars. They are now directly controlling the wars. They have directly bypassed the presidency and are now in the perfect driver's seat of making decisions about war strategy. We were warned about this, and here it is. So former Vice President Joe Biden released a statement on Saturday from the White House blaming his decision to surge U.S. troops to Afghanistan on the policies of President Trump. So after we withdrew, I believe it was Friday, we decided that we were going to send emergency back 3,000 troops into Afghanistan because the Taliban wasn't sure if they were going to stop at our embassy and burn it all to the ground and execute all of the...
Biden asked them nicely not to, though.
Yeah. So, quote, when I came to office, this is what Biden said, when I came to office, I inherited a deal cut by my predecessor in which he invited the Taliban to discuss at Camp David on the eve of 9/11 of 2019. That left the Taliban in the strongest military position since 2001 and imposed a May 1st, 2021 deadline on U.S. forces being removed from the location. Biden said in the statement, quote, shortly before he left office, Trump also drew U.S. forces down to a bare minimum of 2,500 troops. And Joe Biden had to send back in 3,000 just to get the embassy evacuated out.
Yeah. So he was claiming that this deadline being so close was what caused this problem, which is not at all reality. Not one bit is the fact that in the time that since he's been in charge that he has refused to remove our people or remove our equipment. That's on Biden. That's not on Trump.
Yeah, and so there's a distinction that Dyer and I tried to kind of suss out before the stream, and so we'll make it again now. Is there's two things at play here. There is the success and failure of the Afghan government, and that is separate and apart from the success and failure of our pullout and our quote-unquote accidentally arming the Taliban with billions of dollars of military equipment. Those are two separate events. The fall of the Afghan government, I believe what the intel agencies said, that the fall of the Afghan government was really inevitable. As soon as the American military pulled out, it was just inevitable that the Afghan government would fall. I think that the Afghan government falling a couple of hours ago, I don't see that as Biden's failure, and I don't see that as Trump's failure. I see that as an inevitability. Now, the thing that Joe Biden failed on was on the withdrawal, the manner in which he withdrew. It is a failure to have left billions of dollars of military assets that the Taliban has now inherited. That was a failure. It was a failure to not previously evacuate Kabul and to evacuate U.S. diplomats stationed there, to the point where they were there for so long that we had to send back in 3,000 troops to rescue them in an emergency evacuation. That was a failure. Allowing the Afghan government to flee instead of stay and fight was a failure. A lot of things were failures, but the Afghan government collapsing is not necessarily what we're talking about the failure. Now, a lot of other commentators are not making that distinction, and so we kind of wanted to make that distinction here. Because
a lot of them are saying, a lot of them are coming with the assumption that Afghan government being strong enough to not collapse was a possibility. It never was. It was foolish on day one for us to decide to do nation building when we went into Afghanistan. It has been a fool's errand and a failure every day since. And the only difference was we had more sunk cost into that inevitable failure. They would have failed 50 years from now. It would have failed on day one. It will fail today. Their government only existed because we put them there, and there was no culture or values that supported a democratic government. Not that they were democratic in reality in the first place, and they did not have the support of even a very large portion of their populace. And they also don't have a centralized government. That's not how Afghanistan works. They have tribes that in no way were loyal to that government, which was basically a tribe of Kabul. Like it was pretending that they were a legitimate government that had control of anything is folly. So if we had left, no matter when we left, it would have collapsed. And that's the failure of Afghanistan and the failure of us trying to nation build. That already happened, though. The fact that we're already there, the failure of Biden is that he had all this time to not have Americans in danger, to not arm our enemies, and he decided to let that happen.
And there is going around, I'm hearing this from conservative commentators. I'm hearing it from a lot of supposedly conservative politicians. You get this a lot from war hawks, but you're getting it from the quote unquote patriots who aren't necessarily war hawks too. And it's this idea that allowing the Afghan government to collapse is dishonoring the fallen, the American soldiers who fell or have had their lives destroyed or have had some kind of horrific injury from the last 20 years of the war in Afghanistan. And that leaving now and allowing the government to collapse is dishonoring their memory.
Staying a day longer is dishonoring them.
Yes. I think it's, I know it's annoying to me, and I imagine that it's infinitely more annoying to Dyer. Yes. There is a particular commentator, Ben Shapiro, who is continuously referencing that, well, there hasn't been any combat deaths in Afghanistan for the last 18 months. Ergo, there is no cost to us staying there because nobody's dying in combat.
No cost.
Now, Dyer, is combat death, is that the only thing that ever happens to a soldier when they're in a zone like that?
That is not how I measure the cost on my life or my men when we're deployed. No, there's the cost of not being there for your kid being born, not being there for your kids growing up, the cost of not being able to be with your wife, the cost of you missing out on living your life. The fact that there's a common trope of military guys getting divorced because the stress that it puts on your relationship, the fact that people are going home with severe mental injuries from being deployed, people coming home maimed. Yeah, we have great medicine, so a lot of our guys aren't dying. A lot of them are coming home with life-changing injuries. Fuck off.
Yeah. So if you guys maybe you're maybe listening kind of just defaulted into that position or thought maybe, oh, that kind of makes sense. Maybe we are dishonoring their memory by allowing all the things that they fought for to just be given up so quickly. And I would ask you, what is your number of dead soldiers? What is your number of PTSD'd soldiers? What is your number of divorces? What is your number of broken families? As a result, like how many more do we need to continue honoring the fallen? If the fallen are only honored by continuing the tradition of creating more broken people by putting them into these horrific conditions and to giving them PTSD, what is your number that would actually achieve honoring dead soldiers? Is it another 100 killed? Is it another 50 divorces? Is it another 1,000 cases of PTSD? What's the number that would actually honor the people and the soldiers that died the last 20 years? Because if otherwise the alternative is just that we're there forever. If no amount would ever suffice to honoring their memory, then we're just going to be there forever. And essentially your position is that we should just be in places just to be in places, because otherwise we'd be dishonoring people. No, the soldiers who already fell would be, to the extent that their lives were wasted, or that it was to a cause that didn't have any inherent value to America. If that was true, then it was true at the time. If right now America has decided, okay, looking back on it, Afghanistan was kind of a waste of energy. When the soldiers died at the time over the last 20 years, their lives were wasted by our politicians at the time. It's not now that we're pulling out that all of a sudden, because we're pulling out, well, now you're wasting their lives. No,
pulling out to reveal, it's pulling the veil off the mistake.
Yes, their lives were wasted by our politicians and our feckless military leaders a long time ago. It's just now the veil's being lifted, and now you have to look it in the face. Now we're forcing the politicians to look in the face of what they've allowed to happen for the last 20 years. It's not that now that we're pulling out, all of a sudden their lives become wasted. Their lives were wasted at the time. And so again, I ask you, how many more lives, how many more gallons of blood, how many more broken families, how many more cases of PTSD would it take to properly honor the fallen lives, how to properly not waste the lives in Afghanistan? Let's hear a number. And I put this question out to all of the politicians, and I encourage you guys to do the same. If you hear quote unquote conservative politicians doing this rally around the flag thing to justify being a war hawk, to justify getting kickbacks from Raytheon, ask them what the number is. How many more have to die to appropriately honor the fallen. And if the number is just infinite, then you're not really talking about honoring them, are you? You're just talking about forever war.
Right. And I would say that every day they had us fighting for a goal that was not achievable, or a unclear, non-established set of victory terms. There was no established victory terms for us to fight for, and if we had those victory terms, they wouldn't let us fight for them. So it was basically every time someone died, that person's life was being wasted for a non-achievable goal or no goal at all. So it was wasted at the time because of government policies. And if you want to say that there was a way, a future where the Afghan government could have, if we just were there longer, could have survived, I would like to say we spent $2 trillion on training and fighting for and fighting with, as well as $83 billion in equipping 300,000 troops for this government. If that wasn't enough to defeat 75,000 Taliban fighters, then there is nothing we could do for them.
There's also this idea that's been pushed around by other war hawks, and also Ben Shapiro, because he loves wars, that, well, if you kind of compare this to previous American military engagements, after World War II, we maintained our occupation of Germany. We're actually still in Germany right now. I don't know if anybody would classify it as an occupation, but the bases and the troop rotations there haven't significantly changed since World War II. We've always maintained a military presence there. Same thing in Japan and Korea. And so we've got any number of places where that is true, that we've had a military conflict with them, and then we had to have their government rebuilt, and then we've just been there for 70 years. And I would counter that by saying, well, let's look at what happened to that. What did we?
How's Germany going?
Yeah. How is Germany going? They've achieved, with our protection and our stamp of approval, Germany finally achieved its domination over Europe by creating the EU and putting the seat in Germany. And now you've got this German city able to lord over authoritarian over all the citizens of Europe. And you saw what happened when England tried to escape it. Japan, other than the cat girls thing, they turned out kind of fine, but we sent over, because of our military occupation of Japan and our rebuilding of them, we gave away an entire technology sector where all of our technology, a lot of it is produced in Japan now. A lot of our electronics components. Is that good for Japan? Yeah, I guess so. Was that good for the American people long term? I would think not. Is America protecting Germany over the last 70 years so that it could become the Fourth Reich in the EU? Was that good for Germany? It seems to be good for Germany. Was that good for the American people or good for the rest of Europe? I don't think so. So what was the future of Afghanistan? Well, you add another 50 years to it, and at best we have it turn into Japan, where it takes away significant manufacturing sectors for new technologies from America and desaturates our economy for those high-paying, that high-dollar manufacturing sector. And at worst, you would turn Afghanistan into Germany, where it's the leader of some kind of Middle Eastern Union and is the dictatorship of the Middle Eastern Union. So I'm not really seeing any of these so-called benefits of where we have previously just stayed in a country forever. It seems to have not been very, very, very successful when we've done that. Has it achieved peace? Yes. Has it achieved prosperity for America? Maybe in Europe, maybe. We've got iPhones and stuff like that, but could we have had those with that sort of stuff based in America? I absolutely think we could have. And do we think, did Afghanistan really present that much of a threat to the American people? I mean, it's debatable. We certainly had the Well, we went in there under the assumption that they had, under the false assumption that they had weapons of mass destruction. That turned out to be a lie. As for the terror attacks, is the terror attacks really going to be solved by taking over an entire country? I think that's pretty debatable.
I think we should probably talk about what actually caused 9/11. The Daily Mirror says that the collapse of Afghanistan will result in the next 9/11, which shows that, like some people on the left and right who are war hawks, who are using that argument you just mentioned, the Daily Mirror does not understand what actually happened on 9/11. The reason why they were able to fly planes into our buildings was because we brought them in through the immigration process that was way too liberal and did not ensure that they were actually safe to be in our country. And then we trained them to be pilots and gave them the capabilities and opportunity to commit their terrorist acts.
Yep.
It wasn't because Afghanistan was unstable. It wasn't because there was terrorists in the Middle East. Because if they're there, but they have no capability of getting into our country, it doesn't matter.
So, if you hear people supposedly on our side of the fence saying, well, we needed to be there for X, Y, and Z reason, whether it's the war on terror, or it's to honor the fallen, or it's because we have some kind of obligation to defend the Afghani people, I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. If you want to make the case that the Afghani people deserve to be protected by Americans, well, there's a lot of people all over the world that are in oppressive conditions that could also use that help. So if you want to make that case, what you're really making a case for is that America needs to essentially invade most of the planet and have perpetual liberation wars. And that doesn't work. Even if the people deserve to be protected, it doesn't work. And I will give Joe Biden a little bit of slack on one of the things that he said that, it's a little funny that he said that, he's not responsible for anything, because I think that's broadly true, more so than in the context of what he meant it, or that he doesn't accept responsibility for anything. But I think he's correct that he shouldn't have to accept responsibility for the Afghan government collapsing, that was the responsibility of the Afghans to do that. And we look at what did I think the documentary is called What Victory Looks Like, but there is this kind of rose-colored glasses view as to what Afghanistan was 3 weeks ago, that it was this kind of Western utopia that we've created, and an oasis in the desert, and all these Western values. And what we really did was we installed a puppet government. Those puppet government officials funneled as many of our taxpayer dollars as they possibly could corruptly into their own pockets. And then the military leaders that we installed or were appointed by the corrupt government officials spent all their time raping little boys. That's just for starters. So maybe if the Afghan people, if their leaders had been a little less concerned with lining their pockets and a little less concerned with raping little boys, maybe they would have had a chance at defending their country. And that's not, it's a little bit the fault of the Americans and Europe, because that was a policy that was enforced and allowed to happen. But at the end of the day, whatever the culture is over there in Afghanistan, that they were perfectly fine with doing that for as long as they could. And now those same people, those same rapists, pedophiles, corrupt government officials that allowed their country to fall to dust within 12 hours of us leaving, they're trying to escape. And there is a push right now from the Biden administration that they want to start allowing some of these people asylum in America. And I say no, they have to stay in the place that they allowed to fall. There was, no matter what America was doing, there was nothing preventing the Afghani people from having values, from not being corrupt. There was nothing stopping them from not being corrupt. There was nothing stopping them from not raping little boys. There was nothing stopping them from actually implementing good Western values systems. The only thing that was maybe stopping them was their religion. But that's maybe a deeper conversation. So I think Joe Biden's correct in that. And I think that we shouldn't allow the most corrupt members of the Afghan government, the ones that had the most connections, to flee what they've allowed to happen. I think that they should stay there and have to deal with it. And if something happens to them, well, that was of their own making. Now there is some people saying, "Oh, you can't do this because this looks really bad for other American allies." Other American allies might think that we could just abandon them at a moment's notice. And to that I say, if we've got American allies that are, have a government full of corrupt child rapists, then yeah, they should be scared that we'll abandon them, and they should be scared of what will happen to them after we leave. I am absolutely fine with that.
Yeah. So there was general bipartisan support. There's lots of quotes from Republicans and Democrats all saying that we should have stayed in, that Biden shouldn't have pulled us out, and that he should just reversed on Trump's policy. And it's not hard to find. I don't want to go through all the quotes because it'd just be kind of arduous and bring the show even longer. But you should be definitely not surprised by the Democrats saying they want more war, but you should definitely be wary of the Republicans who are now totally war when they were criticizing it before.
Chat's asking me to elaborate on the child rape. I thought that was a better well-known thing. So there is this... research at your own risk, but there is this I don't even know what I would call it, but
there's a word for the culture.
Yeah, it's a practice, I guess. It's called bachabazi. I don't know how to spell it. It translates to boy play. It is something that Islam practices. Afghanistan in particular was a adherent to it. And it is a practice whereby Islamic men, because they are unable to have women in, they're all covered up and stuff like that, well, they still want to get their jollies off. And so there is a practice in Islam. The faith allows for interacting with prepubescent boys in a sexual manner. And this has been institutionalized. And so there is well, not anymore because the Taliban took over, but prior to 12 hours ago, there was an institutionalized system whereby the law enforcement in Afghanistan, the military officials in Afghanistan, their political officials were able to just have their way with any child that they found on the street that was of a lower caste than them. There was a policy that the U.S., the Australian and the UK military, I believe the French military and the Canadian military as well, that the Afghani troops that were being trained on American bases often tried to participate in bachabazi, where they would bring little boys onto American bases and rape them in the barracks. And American soldiers were told that they are to do nothing about it. There was
one soldier punished, actually.
There was one soldier who is in Leavenworth for having done something about this. There is a lot of soldiers from other Western nations who also said, fuck my orders, I'm going to do something about this, and they are also in their own respective military jails. I thought this was better known, that's why I'm referencing it so casually, but to be as blunt as I possibly can, this is something that was very well organized and
documented.
Very well documented as well. But this is something that you wonder why. You wonder why the Afghani military was so ill prepared for us to leave after 20 years. Well, it's because when they were getting trained, it was by people like Mark Milley, who was teaching them about white rage, presumably.
Who gave them the orders to let it happen too,
yes.
by the way.
And then when they weren't in class, they were raping little boys. And they wanted to make sure that the government maintained a situation where they were able to continue doing that. So maybe if they had focused, so that's why it's hilarious to me. It's hilarious to me to say, oh, well, the Afghani people were so much better under American rule. If you are a let's say you're a father in Afghanistan right now, and you've got a little boy. Let's say you got a 6-year-old boy and a 6-year-old little girl, and you're a father in Afghanistan right now. You're up until yesterday, your little boy was subject to being raped by any government official or military official that happened
Nazi
to wander
fags.
How dare you?
Jersey nigger.
Why would you do that?
by. Slowpoke, without fail, always puts a thing in the middle of when I'm talking about something.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Slowpoke. I'll read that out in a second. Where was I? I lost. Okay, so if you were a father in Afghanistan right now, and you had a little girl and a little boy, last week your little boy was subject to being raped by any government official or military official or law enforcement official that happened to wander by. This week your daughter can't go to school
And might be married off to a Taliban fighter. Kind of the same thing.
So I don't know, and I'm not a father, and I sincerely doubt that anybody in that position could even make that choice, but because it's a non-choice. It's a non-choice. But to sit there and pretend for people like Ben Shapiro or anybody in Congress to pretend like it was so much better under American rule is just completely lying. It's completely missing the point. It's just absolutely false. And if that father decides, hey, you know what, maybe we should rise up against the Taliban and maybe get back some of the stuff that we had under the Americans, but obviously not the boy rape stuff. They're not going to be able to do that with us there. We should never have gone there. But
we just made it harder for him.
Yes, all we did was make it harder for him. But just because we shouldn't have gone there doesn't mean that we should just stay there forever. If you accidentally started heroin, and this happens to a lot of people where they will get after the opioid crisis, they'll get prescribed tons and tons of Oxycontin, and then all of a sudden it gets cut off and they need something, or it gets too expensive. And well, heroin's a lot cheaper. And so they'll try it. And just because you've tried heroin and you've become addicted to it, that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that it's good for you to just keep doing it. It's good for you to stop. And yes, it sucks after you stop, but it's good for you to stop. Just because you started in on something that you shouldn't have done doesn't mean you should just keep doing it forever. You have to stop.
Afghanistan with our heroin. I also want to point out that we were very disgusted and angry with Germany because they, for 60 years, had a policy, a government policy of putting children without parents, like orphan children, with pedophiles, hoping that the pedophiles would somehow improve their mental health being raised by a pedophile. That was seen as horribly inhumane and evil by the German government, a real program that did exist for 60 years. And yet, I mean, that harmed a lot of thousands of kids, right? But we, for the last 20 years, have put in a government into place in Afghanistan and funded and protected and equipped that same government who is doing this on an industrial scale.
And this is right, allowing the Afghans, oh, well, it's just part of their culture to rape little boys. That ideology comes directly out of Mark Milley talking about white rage and having this diversity kick. All of these people, all of these military generals reading critical race theory stuff and this anti-Western culture nonsense, all of that is this is the direct result, is because if you're anti-Western culture, you all of a sudden everything else is permissible. All of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you know, me thinking that the Afghani soldiers that we're training and spending, you know, millions of dollars per soldier on, you know, me thinking that maybe we shouldn't let them rape little children on American bases, that we let them do that. You thinking that they shouldn't be allowed to do that? Well, that's just your white Western bias, you fucking bigot. That is, and this is me being upset about that. That's white rage. That's the white rage that Mark Milley wants to learn so much about.
Yes. So, we already went over. Democrats say it is our responsibility to accept okay. So
yeah, even having had no notes for this section and knowing that we were going to just start freewheeling, we went way off the rails.
Yes. So I was watching today. Sorry, it was yesterday. The BBC had a guy on saying that the American pullout, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, was going to result in a bunch of refugees because as the Taliban went through, the people were leaving the cities that took control and tried to find refuge in the cities that were still controlled by the government. Kabul was the last safe haven. Now we have thousands and thousands of people who don't like the Taliban but live in Afghanistan and aren't willing to fight to stop the Taliban because, they could have actually fought, right? But they ran instead. And they're saying that those people are now going to have to, it's going to be our moral responsibility the British guy was telling us it's our moral responsibility to accept these refugees because we created the problem.
It's their moral responsibility to stay in the bed that they made. And if that bed strangles them in the streets, well, they're the ones that made it.
So that's wrong. Second thing was
Dyer's doing a lot of head nodding along with this because he has official positions that he has to keep.
Yep. So, also, you have a great question here. Who let the Taliban generals? Because, by the way,
that's a great question. While you're talking about that, I'll bring up this tweet that asks it.
Okay, so when the Taliban were going through, they released a bunch of Taliban fighters from prisons. But also, the question is, who let the Taliban generals out of Gitmo to allow them to then lead the Taliban forces?
And Jack Posobiec here, he's got kind of a little teaser here. I don't know if it's a little ambiguous. I don't know if the trailer is giving away the whole plot here, but he says, "Wait till you find out who let the five Taliban generals out of Gitmo," and it's got a picture of Obama at his birthday party, and this might be one of those trailers that kind of gives away the plot of the movie here because we have an update, and Jack Posobiec is, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you're missing out on the future before it happens because he's extremely good at saying things are going to happen way before they happen. So he tweeted this out, and then the update to this is oh boy. I was detained by Gitmo in Guantanamo Bay for several years, says one of the Taliban leaders inside the presidential palace of Kabul, Afghanistan. They entered the palace like 6 hours ago, and one of the people who is now sitting on the quote-unquote throne was in Guantanamo Bay a couple of years ago, and Obama let him out.
And they're holding U.S. weapons.
Yeah, what are those? Oh yeah, those are M16s, aren't they? Jesus. Yeah, they're actually holding weapons that you are legally not allowed to own, by the way. Second Amendment and all that. What was I'm not actually, I don't actually know what I'm talking about here. I'm trying to remember, but I'm hoping that me saying the parts that I do remember, maybe you can refresh my memory, Dyer. The 5 Taliban generals, I believe that was a trade for one U.S. soldier who had. Yes. Do you remember? It was
a deserter.
Okay,
yes. So
can you explain this?
He was a deserter who left his unit and then tried to join the Taliban, and then that unit.
This was a U.S. soldier. This was a U.S. soldier who abandoned his post to go join the Taliban. Right?
Yes, and then his unit lost several other soldiers trying to find him, presuming him to be not a deserter, but someone who was taken, and trying to rescue him. And they were very, very angry to find out that he intentionally joined them, and that their losses were basically he led to the other soldiers being killed on his behalf.
I think it was 3 soldiers who died trying to rescue him.
Others were injured as well, but 3 died.
And so then what happened? How did we get to the point where, because I thought that Obama traded for him.
Yes, so he did. So basically what happened was the Taliban saw him as a trade opportunity. So yeah, he tried to join them, but they didn't take him as a soldier. They kept him in prison, and they contacted the U.S. government, said, "Hey, we have this soldier of yours, pretending he's a patriot, not a deserter, and we will we demand that you give us these generals in return." And Obama even though he was told that he was a deserter because it had been found out by that time, but by the unit, the military told him that this was a deserter. He decided for the optics, for a photo op, so he could bring him in and show how great he is by giving a big returning home ceremony for this soldier and pretending he was a hero. For the photo op, Obama traded 5 Taliban generals for 1 deserter.
And so those 5 generals, one of them is sitting on the throne as the new president, or not as the new president, but as one of the people who just took down Kabul. Amazing how it comes full circle so quickly. I am remembering that I accidentally forgot to read Slowpoke's chat earlier. So Slowpoke donated $2 a little bit ago, and he says, "Imagine being such a shithole that you're raped by the people in power, and then the Taliban are your saviors." Yeah, so imagine that you're in such a shithole that the Taliban coming in, that markedly improves your life. Seriously, I've heard this is why some people are so eager to join them, because this is happening to them, and the Taliban stopped it. Yeah, so again, you're faced with that decision of, would you rather have your daughter not go to school, or would you rather have your little boy raped? And so you're putting the Afghan citizenry into this really difficult position. And if we had just not allowed that, that would have gone a long way towards stability. Again, whether or not stability in Afghanistan was possible is probably debatable and maybe unanswerable, but allowing that practice to happen and to defend it to the point where you're going to jail U.S. soldiers for doing anything about it, that certainly didn't help things. Dyer, did you have a special guest who wanted to chip in, or was that just a note that we needed to hurry up?
No.
Hey, Alpha B is here. She want to stop in and say hi.
I just want to say hi.
Hi, Alpha B.
Hi.
Aw. How you doing?
You know, this Taliban thing, it sounds like Benghazi 2.0.
I think this is far worse than Benghazi, but yes, I agree. This is another mismanagement
Yeah, I
issue
think we
in the
had
Middle East.
less State Department officials die this time.
Yeah. Yep, far less of them.
Not as much Hillary Clinton. So chat says hi.
Chat says hi. Chat. So that's an amalgamation of people watching the show are all saying hi.
Oh, hi.
Your fans.
She's not wearing pants.
And I mean, who is?
You bitch.
Oh no! She called you a bitch.
Fuck you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, it's a great point Slowpoke makes. That's it's a situation we've got. So, I'm not sure where we were. The generals, the generals. So, we had not every. The idea of the American soldier is honorable, right? But not every single one is. And so you had this guy who gave up his flag and his country, committed treason to try to give aid and comfort to the enemy. And the Taliban is, they're not that stupid. They realize, oh, well, this guy's a traitor, so he's probably not that valuable of a fighter. And never accept a traitor under your side, because they're just as likely to trade on you. So the Taliban says, okay, well, we'll just, we'll take advantage of this. And Obama was just so happy to allow them to take advantage of America on that. The Biden administration really is the extension of the Obama administration. And this is the completing the circle here, where Obama allowed the Taliban to have their war leaders back. And, Trump kind of paused some of their plans. And then under Biden, the war leaders that Obama installed they're running around the Capitol now. Great for them. not a great situation. It certainly isn't, but it's not improved by us being there. This is the Afghan people. If this is what they wanted to have, this is what they can have. Who are we to impose liberty on people who do not want it?
So as we said at the top of the story, this is still a developing story, and I promise you it's going to get way worse.
Probably. So some of the future projections for what's going to happen, and some of these have been used as justifications for why we should stay there. And I am principled enough to say, even if they happen, I think that we still should have left. So there is widely expected to be beheadings in the streets.
There's already hangings.
Was there?
There's already people hanging from a light post. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Light signal. I mean.
Yeah. So that's what the Taliban does. It is expected that the government officials that we installed and that acted corruptly, that they will be executed in a public manner, which is why the Biden administration is trying to evac them and give them asylum here. And that's why I'm saying, no, they need to stay there. If they weren't strong enough to, again, we gave them everything. When America had our revolution and we bootstrapped our own country, we had nothing. We gave the Afghan people everything. And this is what they built.
The French kind of helped.
Yeah. This is what they built. So they deserve to have what they built. I do not think that we owe them anything. We have already paid them too much. They are not owed anything. What does this look like for other allies we have? I don't care. I just don't care. If like some other sophisticated ally of America says, "Oh, well, we don't want to be allies with America anymore because they abandoned the Taliban or they abandoned the Afghanis," it's like, I don't care. We don't need you. If you don't want to be our ally, that's your problem. So we'll probably see again, executions of government officials. Probably not executions, now that I'm thinking about it, of their military officials, because it seems like their military universally just joined the Taliban. So now that 300,000, that 75,000
died.
What's that?
Any troops that fought and then surrendered were killed, and those who were surrendered immediately were not.
Yeah, so they've kind of already done that purge. For the citizenry, you will the burqa and the hijab are coming back. Punishments for crimes like stealing or other just lower level things will result in hands being removed. There's I think it's a funny video of one of the Taliban officials. So I think it was a BBC reporter asking them, are you going to be punishing for not wearing the hijab or, severing of hands for certain crimes? And the Taliban official says, well, what would you have us do? Not punish these crimes? Which is, a little on the nose there. But that's what the Afghan people can expect. But the Afghan people had 20 years of us enforcing peace. They had 20 years to stand up and do and build something in the protective bubble that we gave them. They had 20 years to do that, and they never did. So again, back to this example of this imaginary Afghan father who has this decision to make about which one of his kids does he want to be oppressed. Well, he also had 20 years to help build his country into something that was worth living in, and they didn't do that. And it's you can be sad that they didn't do that, but it's not your responsibility to pay for it, and it's not Dyer's responsibility to die for it. It was their responsibility to do something with what we gave them. We gave them a very generous gift of 20 years, and they did absolutely nothing with it. And so that is what they get to live in, is nothing. Do not feel obligated that you have some kind of obligation to them. You do not. Don't feel that the military has some obligation to pour out more blood for them. They do not. Do not feel that the already fallen soldiers, that to honor them, you need to continue pouring out blood and continue, giving people PTSD and continue breaking their families and continue creating a safe space for Afghanistan warlords to rape children. Don't think that they're honored by that. Don't allow the war hawks to trick you. They will dress stuff up in patriotism, and it's just absolutely false.
Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of military guys who, because they don't want to feel like they've failed, and because they genuinely had good intentions for the people that are suffering in that country, that they are going to not want to leave because they feel guilty about like possibly failing. And it's all emotional, not logical, not based on any kind of sense. But there are a lot of them that feel that way. And I hope they realize that more suffering, them suffering and their brothers suffering more, is not going to change that outcome. And that they were failed by their civilian leaders. They did not fail. They did their best in a no-win scenario. They served honorably. It's not their fault.
Yes, it is. And the fault lies with specific people. They have names. Their names are Mark Milley, Lloyd Austin, the Navy guy, the Gilday. You have the intelligence state. You have specific people at the State Department who lied about troop numbers. You have specific Joe Biden from the previous Obama administration. You've got Obama himself. Like, there are specific people. You can keep rolling it back. You can roll it all the way back to the talk of the WMDs and George Bush. You can. There is specific people. You've got the Cheneys, Dick Cheney and his daughter. There is specific people whose the fault lies with, but it doesn't lie with the soldiers. That's for sure.
Yep. I look forward to having lots of stories about the atrocities and the general suffering in Afghanistan that is only going to be newsworthy because they're going to want to use those arguments for suffering under that regime as a reason for why we should reinvade or be re-engaged in the Middle East. I'm going to see that on probably both the left and the right, because that's what they want. They want to constantly have a war for us to be fighting. Right now, I think they're going to be sufficiently sated by them trying to prep for war with China, whether it's going to happen or not. That's a lot of spending going into preparing for it, buying new equipment and new advancement and more missiles being added to our inventory. So maybe for a while that will sate the military-industrial complex, so they won't need a new hot war for a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, maybe. Sounds like there was enough Humvees that we left down there that we probably could just built the border wall out of Humvees.
Thousands of them. Jeez. What a waste.
So this is continuing to develop. Obviously, this is something that's needed to happen for a while. There's other places that we need to be pulling out of too.
Next time we have a terrorist attack or any kind of threat from a foreign adversary, we should just blow up their capability to attack us and this from the air, and then leave it at that.
Now, and then there's some other stuff too, talking about people trying to justify why we're over there with kind of economic means. Like, okay, well, Afghanistan has some natural resources. They have a lot of rare earth minerals.
Why do we need oil, huh?
A little bit of oil. And now there's this narrative that, like, oh, well, China's going to come in, and China's already talking with the Taliban, and they're going to come in and they're going to have access to all that stuff and they're going to take it. And it's like, okay, well, the alternative was that we were over there spending all of this money and we actually were still also not able to access any of those resources. So the alternative is this like mythical successful U.S. occupation where we've created a successful state of liberty for the Afghani people, not just enforcing their own oppression on each other, where we created a situation where we had access to their natural resources. That wasn't true. That just never happened. So whether China gets them or nobody gets them, we weren't getting those natural resources anyway. So that's largely an irrelevant argument. It really is. And we actually have plenty of those rare earth natural minerals here in the U.S. The U.S. is big. the U.S. has all kinds of good stuff. We just aren't allowed to access it, for various reasons. So, that's we can be very self-sufficient.
Before we get off the air, I have one last thing I want to show the audience. I'm sending it to you in the chat right now.
Should I click on this? I don't know if chat. Should I click on a link Dyer sent me? Sounds kind of dangerous.
It's just a dick pic. Jeez, relax.
Oh God.
I actually had to send 4 pictures to get the entire thing in.
Yeah, this is so the quote is why we lost. This is why we lost. This is a picture of the I believe the chiefs of staff for the secretaries, or what is this?
Yep. It's just all our top military brass.
Gotcha. So when Jen Psaki says they didn't win, she's talking about these guys.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anything else for the story? We'll probably have more updates later on.
Let's see here. Well, we have our final and most pressing question, Dyer. Now that the Taliban has installed a president and has taken over the country and has even renamed the country, I believe that the most pressing question about the future of the new Taliban state is, will they sign on to the Paris Climate Accords?
I mean, because if they don't, then they're basically monsters. They're trying to destroy the planet. If they do sign on, then they are good, reasonable military leaders, government leaders, right?
Yes.
By the way, I learned from both our country's recent election and the Taliban's election that presidents are just put in place, right? You don't vote on them; they're just selected by those in power, right?
Yeah. Kind of just like tail it off with some levity here. Going back to Michael Malice's tweet, I'm still confused as to if the Afghanistan debacle is due to systemic racism or climate change. The replies to this were pretty good. Let's see here. So maybe it's a combination of lack of transgenderism, no mask mandate, not enough vaccinated people, definitely the unvaxxed. It was about enforcing mask mandates. Let's see here. It was about white supremacy, obviously. Clearly, it was Trump's tweets.
Trump's tweets
probably caused it. Pronoun misuse. That's one of my. I think that's probably one of the top ones. Let's see here. It was
voter ID laws.
Voter ID laws. That's probably. I'm guessing that's the chief one. I think that voter ID laws were probably the reason why the Taliban took over. If they had just removed all of their voter ID laws, they probably would have been fine. But yep. This is the danger of what states like Texas and Florida, they're trying to pass voter ID laws. This is the danger that we face as a country, is that if we pass stricter voter ID laws and have election integrity, the Taliban could just take over. It's a definite possibility. Yes, 100% the Taliban will sign the Paris Agreement. Okay, so that's the show today. Apologies that we were not at the new scheduled time. We're gonna try again next week. We'll shoot for Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. If not, it'll either always be on Sunday or Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, or we'll skip the show. You can be guaranteed that it'll be one of any one of those things.
Yes. Thank you, Billy Free, Texas, for the ice cream.
Yes.
What you can also be assured of is no matter when the show is, it not being on time is always Fox's fault.
Yes. Except for the times that it's ours fault. We always start at the hour minute that we say we're gonna start. It's just sometimes we skip the show and we'll do it on a different day. So it's either at the correct time or we just don't have it that day. But we have been late 2 or 3 times in the last 2 years. Let's see here. Veritas Vahol gave us an ice cream as well. Sylvia gave us a follow, much appreciated. Saw a lot of people over on DLive today, so go ahead and give us a subscribe if you haven't. We're also over on YouTube at the channel name is Direwolf Media, and then we're on some other platforms as well. But good to see you guys, and we'll see you guys again next week. Dyer, anything else to say?
Nope. See you guys next week. Dire Wolf out.
All right, Trevis signing off.